Hey guys, just as I thought we'd done a fantastic job creating the most optimised car setups for every track, Cody's decided to drop the 1.06 patch, which kind of affected the whole handling model. Along with a host of bug fixes, it also means that car setups need to be adjusted. In this video, I'm going to run through how the handling has been changed in this recent patch and how these changes affect our car setups. And finally, I'll look at what changes we need to implement to update our car setups for every track. The recent 1.06 patch for F122 has changed a fair few things with the handling model. Many players were previously saying that the handling model wasn't very good due to the difficulty finding traction at low speeds and the incredible straight line speed of the AI. And thankfully, both of those issues have been adjusted. But there are three big areas that have been changed with this latest patch that affects car setups. Possibly the biggest change comes to the way tyre temperatures work and how they affect your car's handling. Before patch 1.06, you could run incredibly high tyre temperatures at most tracks without really affecting tyre wear. Now, after the patch, higher tyre pressures negatively affect your tyre temps much more. If you run excessively high pressures, your tyres will overheat after just a lap or two, and this will cause vastly increased tyre wear and loss of grip. The working range for the tyres has dropped from around 90 to 110 degrees C down to 90 to 100 degrees C. As soon as your tyres get hotter than 100, you'll start to feel a loss of grip. You'll see in the video now that the tyre temperatures are vastly higher running the same setup after patch 1.06. The next change has come with the traction. Thankfully, traction is now much easier to find at lower speeds. This has been fixed with an adjustment to the gear ratios to make them longer in lower gears and by adjusting the torque curve. Both of these changes make it much easier to apply more throttle at lower speeds before you spin your rear wheels. Next up, the cars have been made to feel a little more weighty with some adjustments to how the suspension works, and this has made the cars in F122 more prone to understeer. This can be fixed by looking at the aerodynamics or the suspension and suspension geometry, or a combination of all three of these things. There are a wide range of other changes that have been introduced with patch 1.06, from bug fixes to force feedback updates, but we're going to focus on these three issues I've just mentioned, as these are the issues that will make us need to change our car setups. So let's look at what changes you need to make to any of our existing car setups. Don't worry, you won't need to find a completely new car setup after patch 1.06, as the handling updates aren't that dramatic. Simply applying these few adjustments to any of our previous car setups will be enough to keep you competitive. The first change you need to make has to be with the tyre pressures. This is the part of the handling and setups that have been affected the most dramatically. If you use any of our original F122 setups, your tyres will almost certainly overheat. However, this is an incredibly easy fix to implement. Simply lowering your tyre pressures at the front and rear of the car will do the job. I found that lowering both front and rear pressures by 2 or 3 clicks brings the tyre temperatures back into their working window. You may need to lower the front a little more than the rear, as you won't be spinning your rear wheels as much. Therefore, you'll be generating less heat from wheel spin. The next change I've looked to make is only a minor one and only applies to some tracks. If you were racing at a track with incredibly low on-throttle differential, such as Hungary for example, where my original setup had an on-throttle diff of just 66, you can raise this up a little bit, say by around 5 points or so. This is because the traction is now easier to find, meaning you won't have such a hard time accelerating from slower speeds. The increased on-throttle diff will allow you to carry greater speed through faster corners, so it's beneficial through a lot of medium to high speed turns. The next part of the setups that I've been changing is the aerodynamics. Due to the increased likelihood of understeering since patch 1.06, you can counter some of this with your aero setup. You can do a couple of things here, either raise your front aero by 2 or 3 clicks, or lower your rear aero by 2 or 3. I wouldn't do both, as this will probably end up with you having a higher front aero than rear, and this can result in an unstable rear of your car. Typically, I've been lowering the rear aero by 2 or 3 clicks at most tracks. This will help your car be a little more front focused, giving better turning and eliminating some of the understeer, while keeping rear stability. To further help solve the new problem of understeering, you can also make a few tweaks to the suspension setup. Typically, most race setups in F122 utilise a stiffer front end and a softer rear end. This promotes understeer into a corner, making your car more stable at medium and higher speeds. The only problem is that this won't help the added understeer that patch 1.06 has brought with it. You may see many time trial setups going for the old approach from F1 2021, where it was common to see a soft front suspension and stiffer rear. However, this approach is pretty extreme as it completely flips the handling model on its head. And it's very likely that it will make your car increasingly unstable at the rear. Instead of going for the extreme approach of inverting our suspension setup, I tend to go for a more subtle approach of softening the front of the car and stiffening the rear, but not to any extreme. For example, a suspension setup of 9-1 and an anti-roll bar setup of 9-1 would now look something more like 4-2 and 5-3. This will increase rotation into corners, but it certainly won't make your car so unstable that it's likely to spin if you're racing on worn tyres. With those changes applied, you can continue to use any of our F122 car setups. The changes to tyre pressures are the most dramatic and will need to be applied to every setup straight away. Then you can apply the adjustments to the aero and the suspension as required. Only look to apply those updates if you feel the car has become too prone to understeer. Let me know how you're finding the handling model and what setup changes have been working for you guys. I may look at creating new setup videos for every track to incorporate these changes, however it will delay the wet setup videos that are planned, so let me know which you prefer in the comments below. And if you found this video helpful, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more daily F122 content. But for now guys, enjoy the new update and I'll see you on track.